Implausible Nature now has dice. That's right, you can get these awesome D6s made by our partner, Baron of Dice. These custom dice have the Implausible Nature logo on the 6 side and also come with square corners, which means they will roll more evenly than rounded corner dice. Head on over to baronofdice.com and use discount code IN40K to get a discount on your order and support us at the same time.
Welcome to Implausible Nature, home to all things Black Templar. Today we're talking about all of the previewed missions in 10th edition. Well, as you can see, it's just me today. Alex is feeling a little bit under the weather, so we're going to talk about some 10th edition missions without him, and hope we have a good time doing it. So over the last few weeks, we've had a couple of things that have been talked about. On the 28th of April, we had an article that was posted up on Warcom that was a result of the differing releases with the Warhammer Fest. And they kind of gave us an expectation of what the missions are going to be, and we'll kind of go through them here. So the first thing to note is there's not going to be any differences in the missions. They're all going to be one core set of rules called Only War, and it's going to be on, for most battles, going to be on a 44 by 60 board, which is what we're familiar with, which is great that we're not going to have to cut up any of our mats, get different size tables, all that stuff. So that's going to be a great thing. It also notes that we're also going to be playing on our short edge board. So it's going to be a little bit interesting how they're going to balance all of the missions with that and the deployments with us automatically knowing that we're going to be on the short edge board edges. So we'll see how that goes. But changes in the missions are going to be pretty big here. So it's actually pretty interesting how they're going to be doing this in 10th edition. So we're used to doing the Grand Tournament deck where a lot of the missions are already preset in the books. They already have a preset deployment with the missions as well as the tertiary mission objective. And then you pick your secondaries, 3 of them, from the stack of them that were allowed. Well, all of that's going out the window, and we're doing a little bit of a combination of both the Tempest of War cards and doing the Grand Tournament format. So how does that work? So you're going to have a deck of cards that you can get in the starter box set, and you're going to mix up all those things. So there's a few things that you're going to do. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to mix up your cards. There's going to be a deployment set of cards in your mission deck. So you will randomly pick one of those deployments, and you will share that with your opponent. Draw that card, that will give you your deployment. The next one is going to be your mission rules. You will also share that with your opponent. Draw that randomly from the pre-selected deck. That'll be your mission rules. And finally, you will draw from your primary missions, and that will be the primary mission that you both will share for that mission. So you're going to have 3 cards that you're going to be drawing: deployment, mission rules, and the primary mission. You will also randomly determine who is the attacker and the defender, and that will decide some of the secondaries. So you're going to be determining who the attacker or defender, but you're not going to deploy your armies yet. So you will decide on your secondaries. So you have a few options here. You can take a fixed secondary, which is 2 secondaries that you'll pick from your deck randomly. Or I'm sorry, this will be selected 2 of them. Often you're going to be picking your armies based on what this fixed mission is. So this is very similar to what we're used to in the Grand Tournament, except there's going to be 2 of them out of the deck, so much less choice for that. But there are some negatives to that. So you can only score a maximum of 40 points on your secondaries. And then your mission primaries, or your primary missions, will allow you to score up to 50 points. So 90 total points plus the 10 points of painting, presumably. So the thing is, with those secondary missions, you can only score a maximum of 20 points with those secondaries each in the whole game. So it'll be very difficult on your fixed objectives to max out your secondaries without playing a basically perfect game. And it sounds like that is the intention, to allow for opponents to be in the game, so you're not going to run away with the game. It makes it more difficult to score, that type of thing. Now, it sounds like, and you can correct me in the comments if I'm incorrect here, but it sounds like the secondary mission deck is going to have the fixed secondaries that you can choose from, and then it will also have a secondary portion of that secondary mission deck where you can do the random secondaries, similar to what the Tempest of War is. So when you're taking those, it's going to be, they call it the tactical missions. So they're more reliable. They give you more points for the secondaries. However, once they are completed, you discard them at the end of your turn, and then you draw another set for once it's your command phase. So you can draw new secondaries, very similar to what the Tempest of War setup is. So you're going to be able to score a lot more points with that section, the tactical mission setup, rather than the fixed secondaries. But I feel like the fixed secondaries are going to be where a lot of the tournament players are going to go, because they're going to build their missions around it. However, if you build more of an all-comer army build, those tactical missions are going to be something that are going to be very interesting to take. You can see some of the missions here on the screen here, the primary missions. So it's going to be very basic. Take and hold is going to be an option for this one. So in the second and third and fourth battle rounds, at the end of each command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 5 victory points for each objective marker they control, up to 15 per turn. And then in the fifth battle round, the player who has the first turn scores victory points as described above, and the person who has the second turn scores at the end of their turn. So that's pretty normal of the different things that we've been doing over the evolution of 9th edition to help prevent first turn being the much better option, and allowing that second turn to really kind of score that points towards the end of the game. I also like that on this little picture here, it shows exactly the timing of the differing rounds and when to score. So if you're savvy at math, you can see that this primary mission gives you a maximum of 60 points if you score on all of those rounds for the max points. However, you can only max out at 50, so that's critically important. So, and then down here on the secondary missions, you can kind of see the two different ones here. There's the capture the enemy post and overwhelming force. So a captured enemy post, you see that this is going to be attacker, and then they're a defender for the overwhelming force. So capture enemy outpost at the end of your turn. If you control one or more objective markers in your opponent's deployment zone, the secondary mission is achieved, and you generate 8 victory points. So this is going to be pretty good. You can see where it notes your secondary mission is achieved. So if you're using it as a tactical mission, you'll discard it at the end of your turn, and you would draw a new one at the beginning of your thing. So I presume if it's a fixed one, you just continue this for the end of your turn. As a defender overwhelming force, while this secondary mission is active, each time an enemy unit that started the turn within range and an objective marker is destroyed, you score 3 victory points to a maximum of 5 victory points. Note that the victory points are scored even if a unit is destroyed and then subsequently resurrected for any reason. If you score any victory points from this secondary mission during a turn, then at the end of that turn, the secondary mission is achieved. So this one's a little bit more confusing as far as it goes. So if it's a fixed mission, this could be a broken secondary. I'm not sure how it's going to be scored, because it says that you score 3 victory points to a maximum of 5 victory points, but it doesn't say each turn. So hopefully that means that you reset it each turn and you can continue to score. Otherwise, getting a maximum of 5 victory points on this one is terrible. But again, this could be part of tactical missions deck. They were not very clear on whether or not there's 2 separate decks there. So if this is tactical missions only, secondary, this would be just fine. So gambits are something you would take in your hand at the end of the third turn. The end of the third turn. So you've already played several turns of the game already. And the reason why they do that is you don't want to play your hand too early as far as what this is going to do. You don't want to give it away, but it also gives you time to decide whether or not the mission is going your way or if it's not. So if the game is not going your way and you're deciding that you're not really able to get to your missions as you really want to, you can play a gambit. You can see the gambits here. I'm not going to read this one for you. You can read it on the screen here, but basically it's very difficult to achieve objectives in the mission. You have 2 turns to get it, and at the end of your turn, if you achieve it, you get 30 points added to your primary score. So that's important to note. So you get 30 points if you achieve it. There's 3 different gambits that you can have, and I'll explain those in just a moment, but 30 points to a maximum of the 50 added on to the primary objectives that you've already scored. So if you scored some points for the first 3 turns on your primary, and you're seeing, okay, so now I'm starting to lose some things, I'm not going to be able to reliably get those primaries the rest of the game, maybe the gambit is a good, worthwhile choice for you. Now, the thing is, it is not a predictable thing. So you cannot build around this, because what you're going to do at the end of that third turn, you're going to take the one that says proceed as planned, which is basically saying that, okay, this card is, if you show your opponent this, because you're going to be doing this all at random and hidden, you show that and you're just going to continue using the primary missions as normal. However, you have a random deck of 3 other ones that you're going to shuffle and draw 2, and then can discard 1 prior to drawing those 2 cards. So you draw the 2, discard that last one, and you pick your gambit from that. So you have those 3 different things, the proceed as planned and those 2 gambits. You decide one at the end of the third turn. Once you both decide on your card, then you reveal them. If your proceed as planned, you just continue using your primary mission, or you have your gambit. But because you have to discard one of those cards, you can't really plan around it. So you have a 33% chance of getting the one that you really want if you're going to go in for those gambits. And if you don't, then, well, you kind of got screwed. So in addition, they're really kind of hard to pull off. Just, you can read here in this particular one, I'm going to paraphrase it. If you're in each of the corners of the battlefield within 9 inches, you get a choice added roll to a 2d6, and you get a 12 or more, you get 30 points on a 2d6. If you're in one quarter, you get added 1 to that 2d6. You're in 2, you get 2, and so forth. So you can potentially have a 2d roll of an 8, and you can get the 30 points. So it's not easy. It's not easy, especially you have to have those units lasted until the very end of the game to get it. But if the game is not going your way, it's a great way to potentially get some points. And natural 12 is pretty difficult to do it if you last that long and maybe have one thing in your opponents. We'll see as far as that goes. So overall, on the secondary missions, I like the idea of being able to have the options of doing some random secondaries, kind of like the Tempest of the War, as well as having fixed. So it gives you the ability to say, hey, I have these choices, the 2 secondaries I want to select. My army's built around it. This is what I really want to do with my force. Great. Maybe you want to build more of an all-around list that's not really going one way or the other. Maybe you want to do those tactical missions, discard it, chance it at a different thing. You get more points out of each one of them, but you get that little randomness. It also allows your opponent to really not be able to plan against your army, depending on what you're picking for the secondary. So while you're if you're doing the fixed ones, your opponent can really kind of build a battle plan around what they want to deny you of, which is downside. But if you're doing the tactical missions, your opponent can't do that. They have to predict what you're going to do and kind of play to what's happening in the game. It's a more reactive style. And when you're playing reactively, you're not in a very good position to dictate your battle plan. So it's something that to consider, you know, depending on your opponent, what you're kind of doing with your army list ahead of the game. But I suspect a lot of the things that we're going to be reviewing our lists, we're going to be looking over those secondary missions, assuming that we're going to be picking the fixed. But if you're doing one-off games, maybe it's something worthwhile to do. The time will tell. We'll see what it looks like with a little bit more information. So overall, I feel like this is going to be a little bit more randomness, give a little bit more character to the game itself, a little bit more of that as far as that goes, which is going to be great. Give it a little bit more of a fun game, randomness, but it also still has the ability for grand tournament players and higher to really kind of build your list to what we're doing and really kind of filtering into that style of game, as well as really kind of bringing in those gambits to allow you to still be in the game if you're really kind of out of it. Now, if you can't score secondaries, that's going to be a problem because not even the gambit's going to really kind of help you. But what we found in tournament games and a lot of games in general is your opponent is going to be beating you on primary. That's really one of the tenets of the trade unit list, right? We want to deny those primary points because it really can't impact what the secondary game is for a lot of different opponents. So we want to make sure that we have the primaries on those objectives and make your opponents take them from you early on with a trade, right? So that you're always scoring points. Now, if that goes wrong and you're facing a really hard list and you can't trade as well, the Gambit would be one of those places where you can get around that and you score some points to get back into the game. All the while, if you're still scoring some secondary points, maybe this will be able to allow you to win the game if you can't score primary. So it's just something to play around with your games. Play testing is obviously going to be paramount here, getting a lot of games, knowing when to use your Gambit, when not to. But I love that it gives you a little bit of a choice here. That's very strategic. It allows you to play a little bit of a mind game with your opponent as far as that goes with your gambits and kind of strategize whether or not you're going to be able to use that gambit versus the primary. As well as, you can either do that fixed secondary or the tactical missions where you're going to be taking a little bit more risk and get the greater rewards. But it's going to be the random, right? So far, I kind of like what they're showing as far as this goes. They did note that they're going to be giving tournaments suggested setups for their deployment, mission rules, and primary missions for each round in the best way. So I think that's really good. If that comes into like a mission pack of some nature, that would be a good one. As long as they keep on updating these things, updating missions. Maybe in the future they can add more to your secondary mission card set or update the cards that are in there. And I'm sure that they will probably still continue to do that in data slate packs. And it would be awesome if we could do that same thing. Cards in potential codexes that we could come in, add those to your list as the randoms that you get. That would be kind of cool to do as well. So that's all that I have for you today as far as the mission goes. I want to take a moment to thank all of our Patreons that have been supporting us over the last couple years. You guys are amazing. And I specifically want to shout out Steve Turner, our second Castellan tier Patreon. So thank you for your upgraded Patreon, and thank you for your support. If you want to join our Discord, we have Discord links in the description. You can join us. We have a very active community that talks about all kinds of different things, whether it be Warhammer 40k, the hobby side of it, random talk about just anything in general that you can think about for Warhammer. And we also have, in the next few weeks, as well as the end of July, or it ends at the end of July here, and we'll make a little post about this one. But we're going to also do a hobby competition. So it's a painting contest, and whoever wins gets going to be get a 10th edition starter box set on Alex and I. So go to our Discord to find out more information about that. But in the end, we want to wish you a great day, and thanks for joining us. Have a great night.